Welcome, everyone. We're once again back on another lovely Monday. Is it raining?
Yep.
Yeah.
Has been.
I know. I have rain today. It was lovely, actually. I love waking up to the rain. So we are reading chapter 2 of Jerry Schultz's book, How to Be an Artist. And just so you guys, I have to do my shameless plug first. Remember, this is a sponsored by the Art Center. So Art Center Sarasota is happy to take any donations that you guys would like to give towards this so that we can continue doing our wonderful, wonderful programming. Not only that, but we also have this week Salon, which we will be talking about land art. So for those of you who don't know about land art, probably the most well-known one is the spiral jetty.
Mm-hmm.
That one I'll mention too, because I like it's a spiral. I like talking about spirals. It's my thing. I'll go into that later. All right, chapter 2. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein. Not just the artist who gets quotes as chapter headings. It's the scientist too. The imagination is endless and always there. It's a lens, a tool that enlarges life, that animates your own Cambrian ocean of past, present, and potential future forms. It adds what Samuel Taylor Coleridge called glorious nonsense, making unreal things real and real things unreal. Pledge allegiance to it. Live up to it, honor and listen to it, take pleasure in it, and let it be your magic lantern and flying carpet. Your imagination extends your mind to the world around you. It pressures, composes, decomposes, and connects thoughts. It's inseparable from you and will be with you on the day you die. The imagination is not a state, said William Blake. It is the human existence itself. Creativity is what you do with your imagination. Write down your flights of fancy, your moments of wonder and fear, your dreams and delusions of grandeur, and then put them to work. Make the imagination your compass star. Chapter 2. Thank you, Jerry. So on that, we have, let me admit Joyce. We're working with imagination. And all of us as either artists or art lovers have that push for imagination and that push for continuing to say that, to look at the world instead of just as in black and white. We have to look at it in a way that allows for you to look at it in a sideways manner. I mean, it's like out of the corner of your eye or something like that. So for me, I end up writing a lot of things down in journals, in my sketchbooks, random thoughts. And words and whatnot, or something that I've heard on the TV, or books, quotes from books are some of my favorite how-tos. And I put them in my sketchbooks because they're a way for me to kind of kickstart my brain, where I'll read something and then it will kind of take me down that neural pathway that is there. I just have to have that little kickstart. So our brains are just continually trained. And out here especially in Florida, I mean, we have so much stimulation. We have the outside world. Now we have technology and computers, which is just like so overstimulated. I mean, you go into Pinterest and you see how many different ideas of what cool things people are doing. But you have to remember that, again, imagination is a whole bunch of thoughts, and it's based on your background and your feelings and your experiences. So how do you take that and then consolidate it into artwork, which is the job of an artist? One of the jobs of an artist is to kind of consolidate our world into it. And if I'm talking too much, please let me know, guys, because you're all really quiet. But I find that I run into the problem of I will start doing research on a new project, and I will research it, and then I will get so caught up in the research that I forgot the imagination part of it that started it all. And I will get so sucked into the research that the art making will not always happen. And so I have to kind of step back from it, which is what my journaling has done and helped me with. Does anyone else do any journaling or sketchbook?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's really helpful. Yes, Judy.
Well, first of all, we've all been trained. You don't interrupt people when they're talking.
That's what raising your hand is for.
Well, I have to preface what I say with, I lived in Santa Fe for 25 years. So I talk about a lot of esoteric stuff, and I believe in past lives and all that stuff. But I've had experiences, I've had journals. My favorite journals are my travel journals, because I put all these ideas down, and then sometimes they end up in a piece of art and sometimes they don't. And when I first started going to Santa Fe, I would train myself. I would drive around all day long, and I would train myself to see shapes, colors, compositions. And I would come home to my motel, and I would do little oil pastels of them, what I saw. They are absolutely wonderful because they aren't filled with lots of little odds and ends. They're filled with just the essence of what I saw. But I do a spiritual exercise every morning, and it's my connection to my higher power. I get so much information about art and pieces and images and colors and all this stuff. And so I talked to my higher power, and it talks back. And I said, I can't get all this down. There's too much. And I was told that you're not doing it just in the physical, you're doing it in many dimensions. And that just made it okay. And I actually got to see a show I had in another dimension it's still happening and it's still evolving. And, I'm not wacko, but it's what works for me. And, and I talked about this at a spiritual group I belong to. And I said about this experience, and 4 people came up afterwards. They said, now I know what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Thanks, Judy.
So, yeah.
Celeste, what did you have to share?
Back to your original statement, Elizabeth, about feeling like your imagination is gone when you go down the rabbit hole of research.
Right.
To me, the point he's making in this book is that you never lose your imagination. Yeah. Even when you're down the rabbit hole of research, it is an extension of your imagination that you're there. What he's saying is that what you do with that imagination is the creative part of your work. And while you're doing your research, it's a necessary step to getting to the place where you can express whatever you're going to create with your imagination, but you never lose it. Am I the only one who is listening to this book as an audio book, by the way? Is anybody else?
I am.
Jerry is the narrator for his book, and he's a New Yorker, I think. Isn't that right, Joyce? Do you think he is?
I believe he is, yeah.
Yeah, and he's very irreverent as he speaks this book. I
Mhm.
mean, he has a real vocal style
Yes.
that echoes a kind of "get back to work, you dummy," you know.
Yeah.
What's
Be
your
matter of
problem?
fact.
Yeah. Yeah, you know. And so I don't think there's ever an appeal to anything in this book. I think it's more like you have everything you need. Now, you know, use it or lose it kind of
Hmm.
idea.
Yeah, I think that this book is very much just kind of reestablishing what we already know, but it's also it's good. That's why we picked it for this first one, is because it's a good discussion starter. And for all of us to, you know, to connect and say, well, we are there. We're there, and we just didn't realize it, or we did, who knows. But on the whole rabbit hole idea, this is Alice in Wonderland, which of course is one of my favorites.
Me too.
I know. I fall down the rabbit hole quite frequently, and I had to, I went and I do research before I do our book club. I actually have quotes and stuff for you guys. So if you can guess which one this is, goes, blah, 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 where are we? Okay. There you go. "You needn't say exactly," the Queen remarked. "I can believe it without that. Now I'll give you something to believe. I'm just 101 5 months and a day." "I can't believe that," said Alice. "Can't you?" said the Queen in a pitying tone. "Try again. Draw a long breath. Shut your eyes." Alice laughed. "There's no use trying," she said. "One cannot believe impossible things." "They say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "When I was young, I always did it for about half an hour a day. And why, why sometimes I even believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." There goes the shawl again. I mean, I get a lot of my inspiration from literature, and it is random quotes from Lewis Carroll. Another of my favorites is Robert Louis Stevenson, Children's Garden of Verses, and poetry and whatnot, because the form of both of these books, both of the books and the poetry from Robert Louis Stevenson, it creates visual imagery in your head. And I relish that. I mean, my favorite books are always the ones that I can remember from my head, and that just kind of that show pictures in my mind. I don't need a camera. I don't need the movie, because they've stuck and they've just inspired me. And I think it's that flight of imagination and creativity that drives me forward to see what new things are out there and new things to learn. Yes, Marcia.
I was going to say, doing the research and putting all that stuff into your head is really, no, that's wonderful. That's like building up your bank account.
It is.
But I always keep a notebook next to my bed. And I also find that when I get into what the athletes call the zone, I used to swim laps, so that when I was swimming laps, there would get a point where my brain would go on automatic pilot. And that's when I'd have my best creative ideas. Because even though I would think I had stopped thinking about what I was thinking about, I was actually now really thinking about it on automatic pilot.
Yes.
And I find you do that when you just wake up, or when you're washing the dishes, or when you're driving. Or, unfortunately, when you're driving, 41, and all of a sudden you end up down, somewhere, and you go, how did I get there? That's when you get the best ideas. If you have the notebook that you were talking about, or Judy was talking about, and you can put those ideas down or sketch them or do whatever it is that the idea wants you to do, then that's real creativity. Because I think I always found that putting things that you don't normally think belong together is where I would get my best ideas.
Yeah.
You know, and so research, you have to put stuff in for that to happen, for you to have stuff there for you to be putting it together.
You do. And, you know, that idea of putting two disassociated things together creates what we also like to call that the like imbalance or a stress within the image or the work. And that also engages the viewer longer, because they're like, something's not quite right. I mean, this is why when you look at the works of Salvador Dali, you just stare at them and you're like, okay, I know there's something hidden there. Oh my God, there's an ant over there. There's a melting clock. Okay, well, this one has, like, you know, there's Native Americans. Wait, that's his wife. I mean, so that's probably, I think that's why he's such a lasting presence in the art world, along with Warhol too, is because they were just taking what we thought of commonplace and putting them in such awkward presentations, or unexpected presentations that we just don't mind looking at them again and again and again. So what do you guys think on that one? Any?
Well,
Yeah, Barb.
my thing is, it's not so much related to what you just said, but as I was listening to everybody, I just wanted to share, because I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but I get stuck in the imagination phase because I happen to have a really good imagination. So, you know, like a lot of us artists do. And sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. But, you know, I'll come up with ideas. I have folders and notebooks and stuff that have all kinds of ideas. But I like that part of the process so much that sometimes I get stuck there and then I don't get into the implementation process of it. And it just sits in these folders with all these ideas that I've had. So is that a thing? Does anybody else experience it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But that's why, you know, all those sketchbooks and those folders and files. Oh, yes, Betty.
I think it's really important to have lots of ideas and be selective. So I think it's a very rich thing to have a lot of ideas and then find the one that's the most compelling that wants to become actualized. And there's nothing wrong with having an idea that you don't go anywhere with.
All right.
You know, I think that's part of what we do. We come up with lots of things and then something will just fit and click more than something else.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I know. Oh, Judy? And then Sharon.
Yeah. I think sometimes, you know, you get in your head and everybody has folders and piles and things torn out. But I think sometimes it depends, not even use the medium you're used to. Just go and start throwing stuff around and see what engages you. And then something will evolve out of that or not. And I mean, I have thrown away so much stuff, but I've learned so much in that process. And then every once in a while, something will come out of that. I'm doing some new stuff right now. One of them is going to get painted over. It's a big canvas. The other one I'm going to keep working on. But, you know, just do something different. And then it kicks in.
Makes sense.
Sharon?
I was just thinking,
And then Celeste.
when Judy was talking the first time about her higher power and tapping into that I had an experience in a workshop when it was being talked about that you should keep something by your bedside so that when you wake up, you can jot down whatever it was you remembered from your dreams. Yeah. But beyond that, it was also said that before you go to sleep, ask yourself what it is you want from your paintings. and think about that, and then jot down in the morning what comes to you. And I've actually had some interesting experiences when I've remembered to do that. And for what it's worth, there's something worthwhile in thinking about what is it that I want, or where is it I want to go with my work before you go to sleep, and then trying to remember what it was in the morning. And then another thought I had was from somewhere, there's a quote, probably from something kind of silly, but what we have here is a failure of imagination. And I think that imagination speaks to more than just creativity and art. I think it's what sparks progress in all different walks of endeavors within our lives, whether it's science or teaching or painting.
Yeah.
Imagination is what takes us beyond what we know into what might be.
I
Anyway.
mean, we're taught in school so many things of, okay, this is this rule and this is that rule and this is how it goes. But if we don't ask the question of why, and we don't push past that, then we don't evolve as humans, and we don't evolve as a culture, and we don't evolve as anything really. We just kind of stay. And there's a neat little theory, and Celeste, I'll get to you in a sec, I promise. There's a neat little theory that without the human race being challenged, meaning we've reached a point where we're technologically comfortable. We have, most of not in the third world, but in our current country, everything is, we can go to the grocery store, we can get what we want when we need it. And without an extra push, without a challenge that has to push us farther, we don't evolve. And I have to say that this pandemic has definitely caused a lot of evolving. So I think that's proving one thing forward, is that everyone has to come up with new ways to adapt to the world. So, Celeste.
I think what Jerry would say in regard to what everyone's speaking to is that there's a difference between imagining and creating. And although they are on the same path, having a pile of things, notes, and other ideas is certainly one's imagination. To have those ideas are part of one's imagination. But then one has to step beyond that and do something with it. Otherwise, we're not creating. So imagining isn't creating in and of itself. It's a necessary part, but it's not sufficient. And that we have to become active. We have to actually do something with our imagination in order to be artists. And I think that's sort of the point of this book as well as this chapter.
I wonder when he's going to start telling us that art is a job, because it is. You got to work at it. Yes, Betty.
It seems to me that a lot depends upon your definition of imagination. I think that one of the things that we need to do as artists is allow our work to speak to us. And when it does, then we become engaged and we move to something that was unexpected, perhaps, that was not in our original plan, that wasn't in the notes, that wasn't something preordained, that we become flexible to respond to the work. And in doing so, we engage in something that I suppose is a kind of thinking that's like imagination.
I think it was it Bob Ross who said there are no accidents? So
Yeah.
only.
No mistakes, just happy accidents.
Yeah, no mistakes, happy accidents. But I mean, I love the fact that I have to say some of my most artwork that I have felt is most successful are ones that I've kind of just like fallen into. I mean, I'll be working on it and I'll have an idea of what exactly it's going to be. and then it will diverge. And if I follow that path, instead of force it back to what I thought it was going to be, I end up with a better or a happier result in my brain. And I think that that's the unconscious actually starting to talk through you. And, you know, kind of melding the two of those, both the unconscious and the conscious, to get them to work together would be an interesting way to, you know, I mean, they talk about, you know, what is it, lucid dreaming and that kind of stuff, but who can control dreams? Yes, Leslie.
Oh, she's muted.
Oh.
Unmuted.
Oh, there you go.
Not to have it focus on me when I cough, you know. Anyway, I was thinking I really like this conversation and I can relate. But one of the sort of an extension of that for me is if, you know, I've done some imagining and then I, you know, get myself into the workspace and I start working with the ideas, I find that if I do, we could call it a series, but more than just a couple renditions of an idea, that will help me follow the path that Elizabeth, you were talking about, where it takes me new places and gets a little more exciting than the first cut.
Yes.
And I also like having a bit of a body of work around an idea. I think that's more interesting for me, and if some of them are good for an audience as well.
Definitely. And, you know, having that, that like kind of that cohesiveness that pulls things together is, is for me feels a little necessary. I don't know if it's for validity or if it is for just my own sense of, am I on the right path type of thing? I don't know. But it's always
from the swimming, you know, the getting in the zone with a piece of work, with an idea, a concept. Maybe it's technique, you know, it's a combination, I'm sure, of all of that.
It is, and it's fascinating to also watch how other people process this, and to see how a project evolves in their head. And you know, when I go to and sit in the demos that we have at the Art Center. And that was always the thing that I really kind of was fascinated with, because their processes were kind of similar from mine, but then they would toss in something totally different, unique to them. Just like, you know, we are our own special snowflakes. And it just, you know, it made sense when you hear them talk and hear their background. And again, it goes back to, you know, what's the epitome, like, you know, all the collection of your experiences put together. And that's how you put things into perspective. I do have another thing here. So we have, once again, I'm going back to my good old Art and Fear. So this is,
I love that book.
I know you love that book.
I love that book.
I know.
Does everybody know about this book?
I love that book.
Okay, so this is what my high school art teacher gave me when I graduated, and she's like, I know you're not going into the art field yet, which was kind of funny that she had said that, because I was going to study marine biology, but she gave me this book, and I read it, and I go back to it, and it's one of those ones where you don't read it all the way through. It's, you pick it up and you read something out of it. So I'll flip through it. So this is on creativity, which they call the C word.
What's the name of the book?
Art and Fear. And all of the books that I've mentioned, I will put down in the blog post on the website, so you guys can have links to them. If you have any that you suggest, please email them to me and I'll add them to the blog post. You know, that way we can have links to things and not have to dig all the way through the book chat. All right. So this one it's called Creativity. and it's a really short paragraph. It says, readers may wish to note that nowhere in this book does the dreaded C word appear. Why should it? Do only some people have ideas, confront problems, dream, live in the real world, and breathe air? So it's saying we're all creative. We can say I've lost the creativity or anything like that, but we're still thinking, breathing human beings. We're still creative. So it's, when you get stuck in that loop in your head that just says, what am I doing? Why? Just remember that you are a creative person because you are a human. And on that one, for me, another way for me to spark my creativity or my imagination when I'm kind of like stuck in a rut, all of my sketchbooks, and I have to say they're like my sketchbooks from like junior high to college, I put them out. I don't know why. I look at the pictures and I'm like, ooh. But I still go back to them because they all have ideas and they are out on a shelf so that I can have access to them. They're not hidden away. They're out so that I can find them again. And I go back to them. It's like kind of, what was it from The Godfather? You go back to the mattresses. So kind of go back to the basics and you figure out what you need to do. Yes, Betty.
I just would like to back up for just a second.
Of course.
And possibly explore the idea of the relationship between knowledge and creativity. Because Albert Einstein, his saying, the title of the chapter, is very dismissive of knowledge. And
it is.
In this age of disinformation, truth and knowledge seem to be terribly important. And I think there is a relationship between knowledge and creativity. For example, I think that the more you master a medium, the more you understand it, the more you can be creative with it. And I just wondered what other people's thoughts might be about the relationship between knowledge and creativity in art.
Anyone? Judy.
I
and then
have
Sharon.
a degree, and I got it many years ago, and I say to myself all the time, it doesn't have to look like what it is. But I agree. I think it's really, really important to have the tools and then break the rules if you want. I mean, I had a student years ago, and I was teaching painting at what used to be Votech, and she just mushed paint around, and about 1 out of 5 came out. And I said, why don't you go take a drawing class? No, I don't want to do that. She was happy with 1 out of 5. But if you have these skills, if you know what your materials do, no, that really doesn't work. If you want it to stick to the canvas, you can't put this over that. And I really believe you need to explore all your materials and then push them.
Isn't that a bit along the lines of the definition of professional? I mean,
yes.
You had someone build your house and they were able to, get the walls up and it looked really cool, but it fell down. I wouldn't want to pay a lot of money for that.
Well put.
You didn't believe in nails. Sharon.
Well, I think people can come to their professional knowledge and experience in a variety of ways. Some like school environments, and some do this, work for 10 years at the same thing, or apprentice with another artist, or read a lot of books and then try what they're learning. So, self-taught. But I don't think professional artists are born and then they're right there,
Sharon.
I think, I think under the heading of knowledge, one can also put experience, that perhaps the more experiences one has in life, the more knowledge you have to bring to bear on your work, whatever that work is, but art in particular. So I think that Yeah, I think that, I don't know how to say it exactly, gathering experiences, if you will, is a useful thing to keep in mind when you're, especially if you're just setting out. I think I read that somewhere as advice to a young artist was be interested in everything and gather experiences beyond just creating art, because it'll all come to bear.
All right, Barbara, and then Marcia.
Well, I reflect on this, a practice for the students that I teach. Whenever they have an idea, we make them make 10 sketches, and how to incorporate that in my own practice, that you always get the idea and follow it. And why not stretch yourself with 10 sketches or 10 different ways to rework what you're thinking about?
That's true. Pushing yourself and like doing that repetition is one that a number of the artists who we have come in push.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Marcia.
What I think the quote was about not so much the knowledge of your materials, but preconceived notion as knowledge. In other words, as a scientist, if you think, well, that's the only way it can be done is this way, is the way it's been done before previously, then you'll never make progress. That sort of puts an end to creative thinking. And I think that's really what Jerry was talking about, was that if the only way people looked at painting was, the traditional painting that was coming out of Italy at a certain time, then we would have never had Impressionism. And if we hadn't had Impressionism, we would have never had Cubism. And do you know what I mean? That you having to knowing that background is perhaps a good base coat, because then you know how to go beyond it, how to reach beyond it. But it's not, I think knowledge is not as defined by what you were talking about, which was how to use your materials as much as it is accepting what went before and not accepting what went before. It's kind of like in elementary school where they said, okay, you're going to draw a tree. It's going to have a brown trunk, and it's going to have green leaves, and the green leaves are supposed to look like that, and the sky is supposed to be blue, and all of that. And I think that's where people lose their creativity, is that somebody has told them what to do, and so they want to get an A, they want to do it right, they want to be a success, and so they abandon creativity and they do it the accepted way. Am I misunderstanding how he was referring to knowledge?
No, I think you're right on with that too. I think both opinions are actually equally valid. If you look at it from Einstein's point of view, where he was, we don't know when Einstein said this. Mm-hmm. Did he do this at the very beginning when he was, flunking out of high school physics? Right. No. I mean, we are mathematics. No, I mean, he may have done it at the very end, when he was talking about his theory of relativity that no one believed actually existed until it got proven after he died. Mm-hmm. So, yes, Betty.
I think Marcia's point is just excellent, but I'd like to go back to the idea of the elementary school child and the tree.
Yeah.
The elementary school child might want to make a different kind of tree and a different interpretation of tree, but they have to have experienced what a tree is first.
Yeah.
And I think that the point is that imagination builds on knowledge rather than dismisses knowledge altogether. That was my point.
And I understand that, but I always go back to the Japanese idea of treeness. If you look at Japanese screen painting, they can represent an entire forest with one little gesture of a leaf. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of ways of knowing treeness. And I really don't want, I mean, I went through a real regular 1960 education where it was the way it was supposed to be. And it was very hard to break that.
Yeah.
And because I love getting stars and checks and you know, A's and all of that. I think that's a system that we have to get away from if you're going to be an artist. There's nobody is going to come around and look at your paintings and give you a check plus or 3 gold stars or whatever. It has to be something you have inside of you that you want to, you have to, not even you want to, that you have to express. And whether anybody sees it the way you do or understands what your expression is, that's not the point. It's not commerce, it's art, right?
Well, can I just respond to that?
Of course. This is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally valid points. The thing is, though, that the United States, for example, is always or seems to always be in the forefront of creative progress. For example, finding a vaccine for the virus. Everyone is looking at the United States and trying to steal our ideas because we're so innovative that we're very likely to come up with whatever it is first. And I think that we're known for that creativity, but it's also based on a foundation of knowledge that we must go beyond in order to find new answers and new options.
Well, and actually, Disneyland is actually a really good example of this one. I mean, they're not engineers, they're Imagineers. And their job is to push the limits of the original vision and push it farther. How do you know, they created, they're not robots, they're animatronics, and using all these different tools, and they cobbled things together. I mean, it was just the innovation that occurs when people are given that free rein and that support, I think is an absolutely beautiful thing, and something that we as a organization and a group, even this group here, I mean, we have so many different ideas, and yet we can come together and talk about them and encourage each other to become, you know, our better selves. So, which is all what this whole book is about. Yes, Barb.
So I just wanted to say too that in terms of knowledge and education, I think sometimes I agree that there are facets of it that are important, but you can look at many people like Thomas Edison, for example, was self-educated, never had like a formal degree. And you look at someone like that, and I think of people who are like, there are musicians that I know of, chefs that I know of, you know, many artists that I know of that have never had formal education or book smarts or that kind of thing. And they kind of fumbled their way through it and found, you know, a way to figure things out and a way to make things work. Are they technically correct according to how they might learn in a, you know, advanced education setting? No, maybe not, but they still get where they need to get, and they express what they need to express. And, you know, I think maybe that's more what this is saying, that it's like, if you have that creativity and the imagination, then that in itself is going to be more valuable to you than having the degree or the book smarts or whatever else, or the extreme knowledge of something, and that you can kind of figure it out. And especially now, like I look at nowadays and I think about like how hard we had to work to get information before, and now all we do is like, oh, Google, tell me, or Siri, tell me. And you know, we get this automatic information. You can learn to do anything on YouTube, basically, really. It's like, there's such, I mean, we're just surrounded by information all the time, you know? So I think that kind of makes it a little bit different nowadays too. That's just my 2 cents.
Yes, Sharon.
I was curious about the Einstein quote, so I just looked, and there's a second part to it.
I know, there is.
Lovely.
It says, imagination is more important than knowledge. knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. So perhaps that's speaking to knowledge is limited, and that what we know right now is going to be built upon, and we won't know what there is to know tomorrow, but we'll get there through imagination.
That's beautiful.
That's what I like to think.
I'm so sorry that he actually cut that quote short then. I think we would have benefited from the whole thing, but no, this is good. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Benny.
My question is for people who are attending here. If you went to art school or have a college degree in art, do you feel that you would have been able to progress the way you have in your studio today without that as easily?
I think Tracy.
I mean, because it's very true that in our field, you really don't need to have a degree.
No.
You don't need to have had specific courses or specific training at all. But my impression is that the training, even though you can't just do that and follow directions and then be an artist, is something that moves you along and gives you the tools in order to gain greater creativity in the end. That's been my experience anyway.
Tracy, did you have something? And then Anne?
I just wonder if sometimes so much formal training can hold you back with your, uncumbered creativity sometimes, because there seems to be a lot of rules when you're learning certain techniques and certain types of painting. And depending on your professors in school, I had some very, very, very rigid. And then I had very few ones that were like very free to let you do what you were wanting to create. So sometimes I felt like it held me back with what I imagined to where I needed to go in that process.
Anne?
I am having the same,
And then Judy.
I'm having that experience at this point because I'm a late bloomer in the art field. I've always enjoyed it and been a participant in observation, but I never really had the time as an elementary teacher to sit down and really be creative. And since I've retired, I've kind of fast-tracked that a little bit by taking as many classes as I can. And before I started that journey, I would paint any picture, I paint furniture. As long as I had a paintbrush in my hand, I was a happy girl. And now that I know so much stuff, I get a little paralyzed. I'm like, if I don't do that correctly, if I, like doing a wet wash or something like that, I'm like, okay, I can't touch it again. No, that's it. I can't touch it again. But I don't really like what it looks like. I go through all these things in my head that before I never really thought about. I just took the brush and made it. And now I know, and I know sooner or later I'm going to get to a point where I say, I'm going to integrate all that knowledge and just go for it. But when I'm in my studio here at the house, I'm feeling compelled to go follow the rules. But in the summers, I'm in Colorado and I go with my girlfriend every Wednesday and we go out and do plein air painting. I don't worry about anything. I mean, I like them all because there's some place and some painting wherever I was and I have that nice memory. But when I get in the studio and I look at my books and I look at all my notes and I'm thinking, okay, I want to do this, then all of a sudden I feel this paralysis coming on, like, okay, I know too much now and I can't move forward because I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. And then, and so that's why I'm very interested in that book you wrote, that you shared with us, because I never was fearful before on actually just doing whatever I want to do. But now that I know more, I know I hesitate on that at times.
Yeah. It's the second guessing. Judy and then Leslie.
I don't think my degree made me any better. Well, no, I take that back. It taught me certain things. I had a fabulous anatomy teacher, and I am grateful to him today. I had a fabulous art history teacher, which I wouldn't have gotten on my own because I wasn't really interested in either one of them. But I think a degree, it depends on what arena you want to participate in and at what level you want to participate. And my degree is no big deal. but it gave me tools. It gave me all these things to work with and then move on, which is to me what education is. You are offered an opportunity to move beyond what you're learning. And so it hasn't hindered me, and it really hasn't, it has helped me because of being able to draw better and know what materials are. But I know a lot about materials because I'm interested in materials. And I found out all that stuff on my own. And printmaking, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a master printer yesterday, and printmaking is not easy. No matter what material you use, it is not easy. And there's so many variables, and you have to learn all that stuff. But you learn it by doing it, not by going to formal education necessarily. That's where it started. So.
Thank you, Judy. Leslie.
Well, good conversation again. It makes me think about the voices that we have in our head. And sometimes you feel unequipped and like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't have enough experience, I'm not good enough. And other times you have a professor who always, was supportive, and, or, a teacher that you had at the art center who really encouraged you. So I don't think, I'm a big believer in education, and I think it's important. And for me, I have multiple degrees in the arts. It gave me a number of years, gave me permission to work every day in my field. And, during those years, I didn't have to go to a job that was not related to art. But, that wasn't the only reason it was valuable, but I sure had some bad professors who, told me I was worthless, and I had great ones, and all those voices in your head, so
Yeah.
I think we just have to fight those, and they come and go, and we have to find our own voice, and that takes time, but we've met very young artists who maybe don't have much education, who just have an incredible sense of themselves, maybe they're old souls in young bodies or something, and they're pretty wonderful too.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I mean, for me, I have an MFA, so I went all the way through grad school. And the plan with that was not because I felt that I needed to get a master's in fine art. It was because I wanted to teach. And in order to teach in the academic setting, you had to have a master's. And, that was my plan. It wasn't because I wanted to go and do a thesis and work more in the academics. It was because I wanted to teach. And because in grad school, it's a totally different animal. You are given a space and told to make stuff. There's no projects. You come up with your own. And then, at least at my school, and then at the end of the semester, you get to stand in front of everyone, all of your colleagues and the professors, and defend the work that you've done for that semester. So there was drive behind it. I think that was what they were pushing you to, just kind of be experimental in that way. But I don't feel that they were always the most supportive, because I was working in printmaking, and we only had one printmaking teacher, and the painters didn't understand the printmakers. And there's a lot of kind of like disconnect within the community. And people just didn't understand each other. And I'm not sure if they wanted to, because they were like, this is my space, this is your space, we're going to stay there. But it made things interesting for fellow grad students, because we were all like, okay, so the teachers don't talk to each other, but we do.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, more of a grad school turned into a learning experience, not so much of about how to push my art and what to do with that. It turned into how to navigate the political undertow of academia, which is a mess.
Curious, has anyone been at the Hermitage and spent some time there as an artist, and what that's like?
I don't think any of us have. Have you guys?
It seems like that is sort of like an an advanced version of grad school where you have your space, you work on a project really intensely, and you have to present it to your colleagues and also to the public. You know, it's sort of what we do in our studio, but we're given permission to do it full time, and maybe, you know, night and day with no husbands and dogs and whatever, cats, excuse mine.
Having that opportunity is a great thing. I have to say that was amazing. Betty.
You know, I had kind of a similar experience in grad school, that I took a lot of courses that didn't necessarily change my life, but it was the intensity of the work and having to defend it and having others outside of yourself critique it, who had some power over you actually and would determine your evaluation. That process was very important in terms of pointing me to actually being an artist. And so putting the politics aside, and there were plenty of politics, that experience of having to find myself and believe in myself and follow through on something and have a defense for it was actually training to become an artist. And really, I came away with something very beneficial, even though I can't really tell you one particular professor who had a profound influence on me in the program.
Yeah, you definitely learn how to grow a thicker skin and how to defend your work and talk about your work in a way that you don't feel like you're saying it wrong, because you have to find your voice. And I think that was a big part of it too. But the imagination part and the creativity, I mean, all the people who were there were already had that. They wouldn't have been there if they didn't. But as
the
artists,
question is, can they develop that, you know, help you develop that in art school or not? They can certainly help you learn discipline and a technique. And I think some teachers are better at it, clearly.
I do. And I think that again, those teachers are not trained teachers. They're artists. So, you know, you can have a really great teacher who can teach you, and then you can have a really great teacher who can just do a number on everything.
Right, but they must be trained teachers. I mean, the definition of that, if you go through grad school, you have to go through the training to do discipline and defend. And isn't that learning to be a teacher too?
It is. And I have to say that that education was there for me just because I wanted it to be there. But the teachers that I encountered in grad school, they were like, they didn't have a teaching background. They wanted to teach, but that doesn't mean that they can. That's what one runs into in higher education a lot.
Yeah.
So, yes, Betty.
And
then
the experience I had in school with in college with college art teachers was that for the most part, with few exceptions, they expected you to learn through osmosis. And they felt that if they were tough on you, then you might have a chance of being an artist. And I have been a teacher, but not, well, I taught on the college level, but not at college. For the most of the time, I taught studio art to high school students. And I learned that in that and I had, of course, education courses, but I learned in teaching that there's a difference between being a serious, wonderful artist and being a teacher. And the difference is that a teacher must be a psychologist first and be able to work with the person and develop trust and develop a way to convey ideas that allows the student to move forward with their own ideas. And that's very different from being an expert artist. And I think many college programs recognize people who have recognition in their own art and have no concept of how to work with students.
Sadly, yes. Ginny, yours is the last comment that we're going to do because it is 3 o'clock, and so we're going to round up. Thank you,
Oh.
Betty. I agree.
Well, thank you. I'll just be brief.
Thank
I
you.
didn't realize that time has gone by so quickly. I've
I
enjoyed
know. It's a good conversation.
Great.
This is why we do it every week.
this. Yes. Well, I'll tap onto Betty because my background was my college degree was in a major in art education and a minor in French. And I thought I really wanted to teach art. But when I did my student teaching, I found out that I was not the disciplinarian for high school students. So I set that aside and then worked as a freelance artist, as a graphic artist, and then I was hired by a major corporation, and I had my own art. I had a staff of 6 artists. So I found that training, I was able to, like Betty say, kind of guide and give some direction to the artist, but you know how when you're working with real creative people, to let them know that I appreciated what they were doing. So I really took those skills and loved the art, but I didn't learn all the mediums myself. So I've just been a novice. I've been doing watercolor painting now for about almost 5 years. And so to get my mind thinking in this imagination is just really kind of foreign to me because I've been kind of a cheerleader, I guess, for these other people. So now that I really enjoy the painting, and this is kind of getting my mind starting in some other directions, but I've spent my life traveling and picking up a lot of photographs now that I work from. And I'm really looking forward to continuing with this. So thanks. Thanks for doing this.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. So to wrap this up, do you have something to say, Barb?
No,
Or are
I
you
was
saying
thank
yes?
you.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
So to wrap this up, we will be doing chapter 3 next week. And chapter 3 is, you guys are like this one. Tell your own story and you will be interesting. And from Louise Bourgeois. So I think I said her last name right.
Bourgeois.
One of my favorite artists. So she's a sculptor. Yay! All right, so we'll be talking about chapter 3 next week. If you have any questions you would like to post to the group or anything like that, or ask me, please send them along to my email address, which you guys have already. And I'm not going to say it on YouTube right now because this will get recorded and put up, and I don't want spam. And remember, please, if you are enjoying this programming, please give a donation to the Art Center, and we plan to keep it going. And we'll see you hopefully at Salon on Friday. So that will be at 4 o'clock. If you would like to attend that, also send me an email, and I will send you the invite for it. Let's see. Oh, those of you who've already registered for this, the code for the next week is the same as what it was this week. So that ID code and password are the same. So you don't have to re-register if you don't want to. I'm going to send out the link. You guys are all on the Book Arts mailing list now. So we'll get this going. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.